Well, hello world. Welcome to TJM, the Jagman Down Under. This episode's a little bit different from the standard stuff. We're going to pull off the covers of one of my favourite Jaguars. In fact, they're all favourites, but this one's been undercover for about a month. We've been busy. It hasn't gone anywhere. So we're going to take the covers off, walk around it, and we're going to drive it up the coast and have a bit of a talk and show you guys what I love about this car. Hello, Anna. Yep. Yes, baby, we're going for a run. My 1985 Silver Sand V12 HE XJS. So we haven't started this old girl for at least 4 weeks, possibly even 5 weeks. But she's been in a snug garage. And hopefully we'll get a little bit of battery power. Well, the interior lights are still on, so we've got a bit of power to go there. And let's see if we can get her started. Show the lightning. Nope, that didn't work. I just think maybe that just wasn't tight enough there. We'll tighten it up later with a spanner. But I think that may have been the problem. Okay, show the lightning. Two seconds. She's a beautiful motor car. What I love about this car, I'm the third owner. She's done now, what's that, 207,000 kilometres in 37 years. Not a lot really. And from judging from the books that I have with it, the majority of the kilometres were done early in its life. Okay, we'll just move Beastie and we'll get this thing out and have a walk around. Well, even though she's had the cover on it, she's still pretty dusty. So we're just going to give this thing a quick rinse and we'll run it down to the service station, fuel it up with some gas, and we're going to head up the Central Coast with her and just see how well she's performing. What I really love about this car is its originality. It's never been an accident. It's got all original paint on it. As I said, I'm the third owner. It's sat up for quite a few years, so when I got it, it wasn't a perfect example. It needed a bit, needed some rear brakes done on it, and some rear shockies it needed new those. But now it's got it running perfectly. It's a pleasure to drive, feels like a new car. Even getting inside it and just smell the leather and the wood. Gorgeous. Okay, just a quick chamois. Now we're just going to run this thing down to the fuel station and fuel all up. Pretty warm day today. I'll just we'll turn the air conditioning on. It should be okay because we put a new compressor in it last. And we'll get going, shall we? Yep. lovely to be back in Huana. Super quiet, this thing. It's an 85 XJS V12 5.3 litre attached to a GM 4-speed auto. It's the HE model, meaning high efficiency. There's 3 versions of XJS. For those who don't know, most of the XJS fellas out there would have a fair bit of knowledge on XJSs. There was the pre-HE, the HE, high efficiency, and then there was the facelift model that came out in, what was it, 91, was it 92? A distinctive feature of the XJSs, they all had the flying buttresses at the back, except for the commercial, the convertibles and the cabriolets. They did make a cabriolet form, they did make a convertible. Convertibles came out in 88, I think cabriolets came out in about 86. And in 86, the cabriolets also came out with a 6-cylinder engine first time, and it was the AJ6 engine in 3.6 form, which later was added to the XJ40s, which came out in 86 as well. HE means high efficiency, design the heads with a higher combustion chamber in them, like to burn the fuel better, because these things came out in a fuel crisis and they weren't very popular back then, because of how much fuel they consumed. Being a big V12, you could expect they're going to consume quite a bit of fuel. So this one's better. I really don't know what sort of fuel consumption I get out of it, but it's pointless to know because I didn't buy it for that reason. I bought this thing about 6 years ago, and it was on speculation that XJSs were extremely undervalued. Where else do you get a Grand Tour supercar V12 for under $10,000? And that was a few years back, fellas, so pretty hard to get for 10 grand these days. This similar example are going for high 20s, mid 30s, depending on their condition. So it's been an investment because I haven't put a lot of money into it, just maintenance. It's pretty good. Back in 85, the only other 2 motor cars that featured V12 engines was Ferrari and Lamborghini. And the specs of those 2 things compared to this were pretty on par, really. Similar motor cars. So you can't buy a Lamborghini or a 1985 Ferrari for 10 grand, that's for sure. So I think we're not going in the right direction. I'm just chatting away there, fellas, and we have missed the servo. Where was I going? Anyway, chuck a Yui here, and off we go back to get some fuel in this thing. First owner was a doctor. He owned it from 1985 until, I think, 4 years lease. He had it till 1990 or 1989, something like that. And then old mate Ron bought it. Old mate Ron is the same bloke that I bought the Series 1 XJ6, the yellow, Miss Daisy, off. And he'd owned it for quite some time. He put about 40,000 kilometres on it, not a lot, but then he laid it up for a while, don't know the reason. So it sat in his garage for a while, which meant the rear brakes were completely all seized up, so that needed doing. There was a leak in the transmission. The exhaust system wasn't all perfect. I had to spend some money on that. But she's road registered and going. All my Jags pretty much are all pretty much going and road registered. No point having them sitting up doing nothing. So we had the pre-HE from 75 to 81. Then we had the HE, which is this girl, from 81 to 91, roughly, I think. And then the facelift model from 91 onwards. The other versions, there was the convertible, as mentioned, came out in 1988. And then eventually the convertible, a 6-cylinder version of the convertible was introduced in 91 or 92. The AJ16 engine, which is the same as in the X300. They also came out with a cabriolet version in 86, which are a great motor car. And that also featured in a 6-cylinder or V12, whatever you wanted. There's an XJR versions. One thing the XJSs did have was only one tank instead of two like all the XJs. She's half full already, so I think she'll take about 30 or 40 litres. That'll be alright, that'll get us there. And I said 30 to 40 litres, so it's pretty close. They're just little things you find after the car's been sitting there for a while, like wiper blade guides come out. I'll look after that in a minute. Just got to keep an eye on all these little things, guys, just to make sure everything's perfect. We haven't even looked under the bonnet yet. I'll check all the oils when we get back. And Anna has its distinct smell. You know, every car's got a distinct smell when you hop in it. In fact, if I was blind and I had to guess which car I was in, I would guess it straight away. One thing about a nice looking XJS is they really do have big curbside appeal. Just checking some fluids. The ones I'm more concerned about is the auto trans. It does tend to drip a bit while it's sitting there. I haven't had a chance to look at it. The rest is pretty good. Yeah, she's down a little bit. Okay, all fluids checked. Dog in the back. Car's packed up. Wifey's with me. Say hello, wifey.
Hi, wifey.
And off we go. There's nothing quite like driving a 37-year-old XJS Jaguar. The refinement's just unbelievable. So quiet in the cabin, zero wind noise. You can hear the purr of the motor when you chuck it back to second. But that's about it. So smooth in the tunnels, just gorgeous. We're on the M1 and you can see it's Easter Monday. We're certainly heading in the right direction. The traffic coming back into Sydney is just horrible. Well, maybe we just spoke too soon because we've just come to almost to a complete stop, bumper to bumper. There's nothing showing on the traffic report. Well, it was only a broken down car and all lanes are still open, but everyone was just rubbernecking. It's almost lunchtime. My wifey and I are going to take a little sneaky exit to get some lunch. We're heading off to Brooklyn, which is just off the M1, a nice little cozy holiday spot. And they have a couple of really nice seafood, just holes in the wall type seafood, takeaway, sit down. But it's always fresh because it just comes straight out of the co-op. I'd say there's going to be a few motorbikes on the road today. This is the old Pacific Highway where they love to scream up and down and basically have accidents and kill themselves. Waterways looks like they've pulled that boat up over there. Crossing the old Hawkesbury River Bridge. Now I'm not going to tell you where this place is, alright, because It's already getting too busy, and I don't like that because it means I won't get a table. This is it, all fresh. Choice is about 5 fresh fish straight off the boat every morning. Prawns.
Just grilled fish chips.
Yum. Well, there's lunch. Wifey and I are going to share that though. Well, we're hitting the road again. Puppy's looking a bit hot. Wifey's with me. We'll get going. I might just chuck this thing into first gear and just give it a bit of a grunt up this mountain. $5,000, 5.5, I'm not revving it to 6. Second gear, 110. Better back it off now, get into trouble. Sounds good, running smooth. If you look over the bonnet of this thing, you can see that it's quite flat. If you look over the bonnet of a 6-cylinder, they're quite raised in the middle because the AJ6 engines are higher and a V12 bonnet doesn't fit on a 6-cylinder XJS. Look at that, Easter Monday, coming home. The Rip Bridge, Brisbane waters. Another interesting fact about the XJS is they were built on the XJ6 short wheelbase platform. So they're really a short wheelbase car. And that's pretty much why they handle so well too. The short wheelbases definitely handle better than a long wheelbase XJ6, and I can assure you that from experience of when I used to race a short wheelbase XJ6 compared to a long wheelbase XJ6. This is Wards Hill Road we're going up. It's a little cutout to get to the top of the hill so we can get back down again. This is the ugly hairpin, and when it's wet, the inexperienced come down this road, put on the brakes, no brakes, and they go straight into the guardrail. Well, we're here. We've done about 130 kilometres up the freeway. So I don't get much of a better feeling than hopping into a 37-year-old car that hasn't been started in 5 weeks, then taking it for a drive with no issues whatsoever. All my Jaguars wouldn't add up to one E-Type in value, but I don't want that. I like the idea of being able to just hop in a different car and take it for a drive, whether we're going for just out for the day or coming up the coast or going on holidays. It's just a great experience. One thing mine is missing is that lower spoiler. Never had it, they're hard to get. Incidentally, the XJS was one of the first cars to use aerodynamic principles like in wind tunnels, etc. And you can see by this streamline that it's obviously working well. And the 12-cylinder engines, I mean, as complicated as they may look, once you get to learn the principles of them and how they operate, they're not all that bad, guys. Truly, they're not all that bad. Just got to buy a good one that's been fully serviced. A lot of things you have to check for. And make sure the coolant's clean in them. If you see rust in those coolant, this one has the 2-cat model. Check down them. Check history of the oil. Make sure she's not blowing any smoke. Make sure they start well. You're always going to get a little oil leak here and there. Okay, we're just going to go through what I look for when you want to buy one of these beauties. Okay, just going to run through what I look for when you want to buy one of these beauties if someone's looking to buy it. Pretty much the same principles with any car. First of all, I just walk around it, get the feel of the car, look at the paint, look at the body panels, look at all corners for rust spots, etc. In Australia, these things do rust, not as bad as UK market, obviously, but you'll find rust spots in all the usual places. Seals are a big deal in rusting, bottom of corner of doors, either side there, either there, or even at the bottom of that panel there, water gets in. In the corner of the buttresses is notorious for rust there, and you can check. Generally, when they try and repair those rust spots, they don't take the windscreen out. So if it looks like it's had a repair, be sus about it. You can always tell by the rear partial shelf if you take that back seat out and just see if there's rust on the inside of that partial shelf. See if the body panels fit. Make sure she's sitting nice and level. Whereas in general terms, if you have the 15-inch wheels, you should be able to just get your hand and fit it under there. If you can't do that, with the 16 it's a little bit more difficult. You know that it's sagging. The rear shockies, there's 4 of these on the rear. Even replacing new, they're not that expensive, but generally you can find some really good second-hand ones because the same rear suspension cradle goes from 1968 right up to the end of Series 3. And there's been a stack of them that's been wrecked but still have good shockies on them. I generally browse eBay and get some pretty good ones. I got some good King Spring ones with some Connie shocks on them that I keep as spares if I ever need them. In 30-something years old, they're all going to leak a little bit of oil unless it's had a full engine rebuild or tranny rebuild. So you never have to really worry about that. One of the most common oil leaks with these V12s is the oil pressure gauge there. If it's old, it'll tend to leak. You can see mine's been replaced. Runs down the back of the engine, all over the gearbox, and everyone looks underneath the car first of all to see where the engine oil's coming from, and then after a while they can detect it from that. So if there is an engine oil leak and you don't know where it is, always go to the oil pressure gauge first, because generally that could be the case. Rust around the sill, as the window pillars are, it's the drain for the turret, so water runs down there and down through into the guard. You'll find here that there's a rubber between the guard and the windowsill there. That'll be always on the HEs, and you'll find on the pre-HEs they've got a Sikaflex, I think, through there. So if you see that's missing, always be a bit suspect that guard's been removed off the car. The wheels on this thing are off a facelift model. It generally would have had the 15-inch starfish on them. I do have a set of 15-inch starfish, but I find it handles so much better with the 16-inch wheels. And check the rear beaver panel, make sure it's nice and dry with no rust in it. Boots can take on water, can be rust in the corners there, so always a good idea just to have a sniff and make sure it smells good. And lift the carpets. I haven't lifted these for ages. I don't know if I really want to leave that stuff under there. That's the old lining that's come off that carpet boot. We'll leave it there for the time being. See how old your battery is. Always check your spare. Make sure it's incompatible with the rest of the wheels. Check your electric aerial, even though they're not expensive. Generally most of them won't be working. Engine wise, if you don't know too much about them, best off to get a professional to look at it. But you always just check your coolants, make sure there's no rust in those tanks. Nice and clean. This one is the 2-cap model. That's a good one to check under there too, if we can get it off. And there's no rust. That's always a good sign. It means it's had regular coolant changes. What else to check? Spark plugs in these HEs are rather difficult to change. I have done them. And generally, you cannot get to number 1 at the front here because of the air compressor. And Slack Mechanics, they changed 11 of them, but they never changed the one that they can't get to without pulling some more componentry apart. Front shockies also, they're pretty cheap. If you hear a rattle when you're driving the test run of the car, first thing to look at is the upper bushes of the shockies, and just move the car a little bit if you can. If you see any movement in that upper shockies, you know that's just the rubbers that have perished. They're easy to replace. And another rattle simply could be just the sway bar bushes. If they wear, which they get a lot of pressure on them, it will put a rattle right through the car. That sounds nasty, but it's probably not that serious. Front suspension stuff, it's pretty easy to replace anyway. It's just bushes, rack bushes. They're a little bit more difficult, but they still can be done relatively cheaply. These oval headlights are around about $2,000 each, so make sure they're in reasonably good condition. Pretty hard to get a set that hasn't had some sort of pitting or fading inside. The silver chrome plating disintegrates because of moisture in there. Mine aren't bad, but if you look closely you can see a little bit of brown in there on both of these, but they're still acceptable. Inside's pretty straightforward. If the car's been garaged most of the life, the leather will be still in good order. If the garage is lived outside, obviously the leather's not going to be that sort of perfect. Mine's okay, there's no rips or tears. I have been doing a little bit of a repair job just on this area here, and I haven't finished it yet. I need some leather binder just to tight fill that one up again, and then I'll give it another prepping and we'll put some colour into it. I've been a bit slack with that one. Generally this one's been a pretty nice looking motor car. Timber has no cracking in it. Check your crash pad, make sure it hasn't got any cracks, because they're not as simple to replace as say an XJ series 1, 2 or 3. The whole dash has got to come off, this whole thing, and replaced. Check your door cards. Water ingresses into those door cards from the inside if the drains get blocked. Little drainies under here, and if water gets in there and stays there, it'll just warp out the cards. Again, it's a handyman job to replace them, but it's extra work you have to do. Check the mileage, make sure it links up with your brake pedal with the wear. I can see that brake pedal has wear, but it's only got about 207,000 kilometres worth of wear. Your little armrests, they're always normally worn or gone. Again, you can buy covers for those relatively cheaply off eBay. And when inside, it's a good idea to check all your electrics. Mine has, I think this is the original radio in it, and it works pretty good. I just use this little Bluetooth device so I can hook up my phone to it. So I don't really want to replace it because it's got that bit of a retro look. The original onboard computers, I think they're really a waste of time. I don't think they ever work accurately or not. I don't even hardly ever look at it. What I do look at, make sure my mirrors are working on both sides. If they're not, then maybe because they've been disconnected for some reason, or the mirror or the motor is US itself. And always check your Mark II, Delair Mark II air conditioning system in these things. They're generally, and 90% of them aren't working correctly. But as long as you can get the fan going and the temperature going, other componentries might fail in it, but as long as you can get the cool air or warm air through the system, that's all you really need with them. The gearbox fails on them, the gears change, which inevitably will change flat positions, and the amplifiers fail. You can get replacement ones of them, and they really tell the gearbox what to do. Obviously, if it's the first time you're looking at the car, make sure you start it up from cold and keep an eye on the gauges. Make sure that oil light goes out pretty quickly, and watch the temperature and watch the oil gauge go up. It should go up reasonably high when the engine's cool. Voltmeter's not that important, as long as the light is not showing up there, you know it's charging. There's my battery indicator. This one's charging and working. These the dashes can fail quite regularly. The circuitry, it's really early type circuitry on it, and a lot of the solder joints fail on them. This one works well. My 88 convertible has issues, and my pre-HE, which I don't have anymore, also had issues. Down on this side of it, check the windows are working. It's always important. Make sure they're going. Window motors are pretty easy to find, and they're reasonably easy to replace. Well, look what just arrived at my doorstep.
Darkening your door, eh? It is beautiful, isn't it?
Don't have one of these in the workshop, that's for sure. Looking good. Okay, that's about it for me on this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was just something that I felt like I had to do and show off my beautiful XJS. It might have been a bit boring for some of you boys out there that already have them, but for potential people who want to buy them, I'm sure I can help. If any questions or anything, just pop it down in the comments field and I can answer them pretty quickly. And if you did like the video, just press the thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, just please subscribe. Makes me a happier man. Anyway, enjoy guys. Thanks very much again for watching. Just a little add-on, we're home. 320 k's round trip without a hitch. Half a tank of fuel. And just remember guys, we've been on a long run on the XJSs, to open the hoodie, let all those hot airs escape out of there so it doesn't brittle your harnesses, etc. They're getting old, so we've got to look after these old girls.